You may have seen wild animals attacking people, but today's story takes a completely different twist. The story begins in a zoo, where some hunters sneak in and steal a lion cub. The cub is then caged and taken on a plane. Later, we see a 25-year-old woman named Alma, who aspires to become a pianist and loves animals. One day, she decides to visit an island that used to belong to her grandfather. Her grandfather had adopted her years ago, and after his passing, the island was passed down to Alma as an inheritance. Upon her arrival, Uncle Joe warmly welcomes her. There is a beautiful house on the island, and Alma decides to spend the night there. While watching videos of her grandfather that evening, Alma becomes emotional. In one video, her grandfather talks about a female wolf named Snow, who had mysteriously arrived on the island some years ago. Over time, the two developed a strong bond. Alma's grandfather encourages her to find Snow and befriend her as well. That night, the plane carrying the lion cub crashes on the island due to severe weather. Hearing the crash, Alma is startled and goes outside to investigate, but the island is vast, and she finds nothing. The next morning, two young people, Charles and Eli Nam, arrive on the island. They set traps to capture Snow, as they are members of a wolf park and want to take Snow back with them. After a while, Snow falls into one of the traps, but with her cleverness, she manages to escape before Charles and Eli Nam arrive. Snow then makes her way to the other side of the island, where she encounters Alma. Initially, Alma is frightened, but she remembers her grandfather's words and begins to approach Snow. Soon after, Alma reaches the crash site of the plane. Luckily, the lion cub is unharmed, having landed in a bird's nest, although the bird pushes him off, causing him to fall directly into Alma's lap. Alma happily takes the cub back home. At that moment, Snow also arrives at the house with her own cub. Alma is thrilled to see the three adorable animals together and immediately calls Uncle Joe. However, he warns her that keeping such dangerous animals at home is unwise and advises her to give them to the zoo. He also mentions that zoo employees will eventually come looking for the lion cub. True to his words, the next day, animal control officers arrive. Knowing how ruthless they can be, Alma decides not to reveal anything about the animals. She lies, saying she hasn't seen any lion cub. Returning home, Alma finds Snow nursing both her cub and the lion cub, which brings her immense joy, as Snow is now caring for both babies. Over time, the two cubs grow closer and become friends. Alma names the wolf cub Jack and the lion cub Dreamer. Uncle Joe worries that these wild animals might pose a threat to Alma, but as months pass, the cubs grow a bit bigger, and Alma takes them to explore the island and play in her grandfather's favorite spots. One day, while Alma is away for a piano audition, the Wolf Park employees manage to infiltrate the island again and capture Snow. Meanwhile, Alma's audition is successful and she is elated. However, when she returns home, she is shocked to find her house in disarray, as the cubs were hungry and grew restless in Snow's absence. Desperate to find Snow, Alma scours the island but finds no trace of her. Left with the responsibility of feeding the cubs, she reluctantly decides to give up her dream of becoming a pianist. One day, Uncle Joe visits again and becomes furious upon seeing the wild animals still in the house. He insists that Alma should send them to the zoo, but Alma explains that it was her grandfather's wish for her to live with the animals. She also expresses her concerns about the cruelty animals might face in captivity. Joe eventually softens and hugs her. From then on, Alma's days are filled with feeding and caring for the animals. She grows deeply fond of Jack and Dreamer, and in return, the animals adore her. A year quickly passes, and now the animals have grown even larger. Uncle Joe brings meat from the city for them, although he fears getting too close to them. He again cautions Alma about the potential danger of living with such animals, but Alma remains determined to keep them with her. One day, a man and a woman come near the island on a boat. Seeing them, Jack approaches them. When Alma notices, she rushes to stop him but accidentally trips over a rock, hits her head, and falls unconscious. The woman on the boat doesn't witness the accident and sails away. In a short while, Jack and Dreamer came to Alma and tried their best to wake her up, but it was in vain. They cried out loudly for hours, calling for help, but no one came. Soon, night fell, and the two animals stayed close to Alma, keeping her warm throughout the night. The next morning, Uncle Joe called Alma several times, but when he didn't get any response, he sensed that something was wrong. He immediately went to the island, fearing that the wild animals might have attacked Alma, and so he called animal control. However, when he found Alma unconscious and the animals protecting her, he felt deeply remorseful for his actions. Later, when Alma was taken to the hospital, the doctor told them that if Jack and Dreamer hadn't kept her warm, she might not have survived. Meanwhile, animal control captured Jack and handed him over to Charles, as they realized that Jack was actually Snow's offspring. Dreamer, on the other hand, was sold to a man named Alan who ran a zoo. Alan was a cruel man who often mistreated his animals. However, unlike his father, Alan's son Rafa was kind-hearted and soon became friends with Dreamer. But within days, poor Dreamer was drugged with sedatives and forced to perform in a circus. Dreamer had spent his early life happily on the island, but these cruel people deeply scarred him. Rafa often went to comfort him. In the hospital, as soon as Alma regained consciousness, she asked about Jack and Dreamer. With a heavy heart, Uncle Joe told her the whole truth. As soon as Alma left the hospital, she headed straight to the animal control office, where she learned that Jack had been sent to the wolf park and Dreamer had been sold to a circus group. Enraged, she yelled at the officer, but Uncle Joe calmed her down. Later, Alma called Eli to inquire about Jack, and he told her that Jack was happy and had even made a few friends, which gave Alma some relief. However, she was still deeply worried about Dreamer. For the next few weeks, Alma visited every circus in town, asking about Dreamer, but found no leads. Meanwhile, Dreamer became famous as the Star Lion. One day, Dreamer's circus group was passing near the wolf park, and Jack immediately recognized his childhood friend. Using his wit, he escaped from his cage. Seeing this, Eli realized that Jack was very intelligent and must be searching for something. He soon found what he was looking for and cleverly managed to free Dreamer from his cage as well. After being reunited after so many months, the two played joyfully. When Alan found out about Dreamer's escape, he angrily took out his tranquilizer gun. Rafa tried to stop him, but greedy Alan ignored him. However, Rafa decided to follow his father to help Dreamer. Alan also informed Eli about Dreamer, and Eli realized that Jack and Dreamer were together. A high alert was issued across the city. Eli told Alma everything, including that animal control was hunting the two animals. Hearing this, Alma became anxious, but Eli informed her that Jack had a tracker implanted in his body. Jack and Dreamer's last location was near a forest. Alma and Eli decided to search for the animals together. Meanwhile, the two animals roamed openly in the city, leading the police to issue a shoot-on-sight order. Eventually, the animals returned to the forest, where Alan and Rafa spotted them. Alan shot at Dreamer with his tranquilizer gun, but Jack jumped in front of his friend, taking the shot and immediately passing out, while Dreamer got a chance to escape. Once Dreamer fled, Rafa quickly removed the dart from Jack and administered medicine to counteract the tranquilizer. Shortly after, father and son reached a nearby bar, where Alma and Eli arrived with a tractor. Alan tried to send them away, but clever Rafa pretended to go to the restroom and told Eli and Alma the truth. He then led them to the forest, where they finally found Dreamer. Dreamer took them to a hut where Jack was resting, and luckily, he regained consciousness just in time. But then they suspected the police were approaching, so Alma led both animals to a secret path to help them escape. Now, they only had to cross a river to reach the island, their only way to avoid the police. But there was no boat, so they had to swim across. Jack immediately leapt into the water, but Dreamer, afraid of water, hesitated. Alma encouraged him, but Dreamer turned back toward the forest. As Jack and Alma were swimming, they heard gunshots, which meant that Dreamer was no longer alive. Once on the island, Alma broke down in tears. But suddenly, Dreamer appeared before her. He had gone back to the forest to distract the police. Seeing him alive, everyone was overjoyed. Finally, Alma played the piano at a party to celebrate Jack and Dreamer's return, and their family was complete once again. In the end, Alma shared the story of her beloved animals, which touched everyone's hearts, and the three of them lived happily together once more. So, what's your favorite wild animal, and would you want to keep it as a pet? Let me know in the comments.